let's start by looking at this essay. We're going to look at the introduction right now because this is what we are focusing on today. Okay, let's start. Just because she is older and I am younger, she is right and I am not. Mrs. Price acted in an unjust way towards Rachel, making her uncomfortable in front of the whole class. What pushed Mrs. Price to act the way she did is that she wanted to get rid of the sweater. Therefore, she believed Sylvia over Rachel, who was too timid to speak up for herself. And moreover, she wanted to show her dominancy over the class. Okay, it's a short introduction, concise, to the point, has all of the elements that we want, but there are a few mistakes. Let's take a look. Number one, just because she is older and I am younger, she is right and I am not. This is a quote from the story. Not a bad way to start, okay? However, not saying who said this sentence is not a very good idea. So, Maria, I would have preferred to see something like this. I'll answer you in a minute. Just because she is older and I am younger, she is right and I am not. Rachel said. Or, Rachel, the girl who just turned 11, said, just because she is older and I am younger, she is right and I am not. Or, in the following sentence, if you want to keep it like this way, just tell me that Rachel is the person who said the sentence before, and maybe you can give me context of why she said this, okay? Or how this has to do with what you're going to talk about. Now, afterwards, Mrs. Price acted in an unjust way towards Rachel. As we said before, towards with an S is correct, and without an S is also correct. Typically, towards with an S is British, and without an S is American. They should both be acceptable on the essay. However, if you want to go the American way, then taking away the S would probably be better. Rachel is misspelled many times, okay? Of course, you don't need to know how to spell names. However, if this name is repeated frequently in the story, then we should be able to write it the way it is in the story. Toward Rachel, making her uncomfortable in front of the whole class. Now, this was an introduction, okay? You're telling me that Mrs. Price acted in an unjust way. You gave me a quotation from the story at the beginning. That's a nice scene-setting sentence. So let's call all this the scene-setting sentence, SSS. The first sentence of your introduction. Now, afterwards, I should expect to see your opinion or your thesis sentence. Let's see. What pushed Mrs. Price to act the way she did? I really like this because the question was, why do you think Mrs. Price acted the way she did? So you're actually answering the question using words very similar to the question, which keeps the reader focused on what you're writing, and you're forcing the reader to take note that this is actually the answer to the question because you're using the same word. So that's a good idea. That she wanted to get rid of the sweater. So what pushed Mrs. Price to act the way she did is that she wanted to get rid of the sweater. So I believe that this is the first reason that she wanted to get rid of the sweater. Therefore, okay, now if you take a look here, before the comma, you have a complete sentence, okay? An independent clause. What pushed Mrs. Price to act the way she did is that she wanted to get rid of the sweater. That's a complete sentence. Comma, therefore. After therefore, guys, and this is something we'll be doing in more details in 1 or 2 classes, she believed Sylvia over Rachel, who was too timid to speak up for herself. So this is another complete sentence. Therefore, with a complete sentence after it, all becomes a complete sentence. Meaning that therefore she believed Sylvia over Rachel, who was too timid, is a complete sentence. Having 2 complete sentences this way, with a comma in between, is called a run-on sentence. It's wrong, okay? Now, to make this better, either you would put a period and start a new sentence, or you could put a semicolon right here, okay? Therefore, she believed Sylvia over Rachel, who was too timid to speak up for herself, period. Now it's getting too long, okay? Now, take away the and because we're starting a sentence, and begin the sentence with moreover. Moreover, comma, she wanted to show her dominancy over the class. Again, as I said last time, I know it's obvious that we're talking about Mrs. Price here. However, when we have a story that has two heroines, Mrs. Price and Rachel, they're both girls or they're both women, then it's better to name the person you're talking about more often than just using she, so it doesn't become an ambiguous pronoun. So I would say something like, moreover, Mrs. Price wanted to show her dominancy over the class. Okay, now, what I understand from this introduction is that you have two distinct reasons. One is that she wanted to get rid of the sweater altogether, in any way possible, and number two, she wanted to show her dominancy over the class. I can't see a clear third reason. Perhaps if we read the rest of the essay, we'll find a third reason. So here was the introduction. We analyzed it together. It was very well written, but there are a few grammar mistakes here that you should take care not to do on the test. Okay, that was one. Okay, let's take a look at another introduction. Okay, here is another introduction. Again, I removed the names. I don't even know who this belongs to. In the short story 11, there were four main reasons that Mrs. Price was being disrespectful and very stern to a student who had just turned 11, called Rachel. Mrs. Price was fed up because she had that sweater in the classroom for over a month, and she wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Mrs. Price was being stern, because she wanted to prove her dominancy to the class, to gain more respect. She was older than Rachel, and also she liked Sylvia Salvador. That's not how the name is spelled. It's Saldivar. More than Rachel. Mainly because Rachel was timid and quiet, and that she was the easiest to blame it on. Okay. Again, the components of the introduction are there. However, there are some mistakes. Let's analyze them. Take a look. In the short story 11, you don't need to say the name of the author. Okay? If you want to, it's fine, but you don't need to. In the short story 11, there were four main reasons. Now here you really need to decide on what tense or tenses you're going to be using. You see here you said there were four main reasons. So, should you say in the story there were four main reasons? Or are the reasons actually your opinion? If it's your opinion right now, which is the way it should be, then you can say in the short story 11 there are four main reasons that Mrs. Price was being disrespectful. So this, I believe, would be a wrong tense. Four main reasons that Mrs. Price was being disrespectful and very stern to a student who had just turned 11 called Rachel. Now, you could have said there were four main reasons why Mrs. Price acted the way she did. Or you could elaborate like the way you did. So, there are four main reasons that Mrs. Price was being disrespectful and very stern to a student. I would like it to be written this way, was being disrespectful and very stern to Rachel, comma, a student who had just turned 11. This way it's a little bit clearer, because having who had just turned 11 comma called Rachel, it's not really coherence. It's some sort of a misplaced modifier. So I prefer it to be written this way. Now, she was being disrespectful and stern. I really don't like the use of the word stern here, because she was lying. She was disrespectful. She was irrational. There are other words to better describe the way Mrs. Price acted. So disrespectful and very stern. Perhaps stern is not a proper adjective to use. However, Mrs. Price was fed up because she had that sweater. Now, that here is a pronoun that should refer to something you referred to before. Now, saying that sweater means that we talked about the sweater a little while ago, which we didn't. So I would prefer something like Mrs. Price was fed up because she had the sweater in the classroom for over a month. Period. Enough. You have a very long sentence right here. So here's just one part. Mrs. Price was fed up because she had the sweater in the classroom for over a month. And she wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Maybe I should write something like this. Consequently, or as a result, Consequently, comma, she wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So the first sentence is saying that she was fed up with the sweater because it had been there for over a month. Then your second sentence says, as a result, consequently, because she was fed up, she wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Mrs. Price was being stern because she wanted to prove her dominancy to the class. Comma. To gain more respect, comma, she. Now, wait a minute. Mrs. Price was being stern because, 1. She wanted to prove her dominancy to the class, comma. 2. To gain more respect, comma. 3. She was older than Rachel. This is not a parallel sentence. She wanted to prove, she wanted to gain, to be, to come, to go. So to prove, to gain, that doesn't really make sense. Well, how can I, on the test, write a proper sentence that doesn't have this parallelism mistake? One of the tricks in order to do that so you don't fall into any of those traps is to divide them into two sentences. So let's read the sentence one more time. Mrs. Price was being stern. Again, I disagree on the use of the word stern. Because she wanted to prove her dominancy to the class and to gain more respect. Period. Another sentence. Furthermore, or also, comma, she was older than Rachel. And also she likes Sylvia Salvador. No, so furthermore, she was older than Rachel and liked Sylvia Saldivar more than Rachel. Period. Then I can start a third sentence. Mainly because Rachel was timid and quiet and she was the easiest to blame it on. So you could say perhaps she acted that way mainly because Rachel was timid and quiet and that she was the easiest to blame it on. So Rachel was timid, comma, quiet, comma, and the easiest to blame it on. Now the use of the word it here, again, is an ambiguous pronoun. What is it? Don't just say it without referring to a certain noun. So that she was the easiest to blame the problem of the sweater, or to blame the sweater thingy, whatever you're gonna say on the essay, on, instead of using the word it. Okay? And then of course there is a missing period here, which is probably just a typo. So this is how we can improve this introduction on the test. Okay. Here's a third introduction for today from the story The Smile. Let's take a look. The story The Smile by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, again, I don't need to write the name of the author, is a perplexing story due to the fact that some people do not understand if the story is fiction or non-fiction. And that is why the guard helped him escape. There are two main reasons which determine why this occurred. We all know that all people have a soft point inside their body. When the Nazis captured Saint-Exupéry and threw him in jail, the security guard liked when someone smiled, and that's why he helped him escape. Also, the man had not done any harm to the security guard, so he let him go. The guard did not want Saint-Exupéry to lose his family, and he imagined if this happened to him. Okay, now here's a little problem. I really don't remember who this introduction belongs to, but it's obvious that you didn't read the story. Okay? The question at the top of the page was, how do you believe the smile changed Saint-Exupéry's view of people? So, the question was, how do you think the smile in that story changed the way this person, Saint-Exupéry, looked at people, or how he saw people? Okay? Here you are giving an introduction to the story, or you're basically summarizing the story, which is not an answer to the question. Remember, guys, in our introductions, we must answer the question. That is the most important part of our introduction. in any short essay, any essay where you only have 40 minutes or something to write on a test like the Bergen Academy's test, the number one thing we're looking for in the introduction is a clear answer to the question. Here you are not answering the question, you are summarizing the story. However, let's analyze it really quickly and see if there are any grammar mistakes, for example. The Story The Smile by Antoine Saint-Exupéry is a perplexing story due to the fact that some people do not understand if the story is fiction or non-fiction. You can put a period right here. You don't need to say "and that's why" and add in another sentence. You're just wasting time here and it looks really long. Now, I can start a new sentence and say, this debacle, this problem, this confusion, this ambiguity, the perplexing thing that you were talking about is why the guard helped him escape. So I need another pronoun here. There are two main reasons. Let's just stop here for a moment. Of course, here it doesn't really make sense because some people disagree on whether this story is fact or fiction, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. That's why the guard helped him escape? How is this a reason to that? Okay. There are two main reasons which determine why this occurred. Okay, great. So I have here two main reasons. So a clear hint on the number of reasons you should be talking about in the rest of your essay. This occurred, again, is an ambiguous pronoun. I should say why this event occurred, why this story occurred, or just remove the this altogether. There are two main reasons which determine why Saint-Exupéry did so, so, and so, and so. We all know that all people have a soft point. Now, here, this is called noun-number agreement, okay? You're saying that all people have a soft point? That's impossible. Not all people can have just one soft point. So, that all people have soft points, or that each person has a soft point inside him or her, inside his or her body. So, to make this sentence correct, using people, we all know that all people have soft points inside their bodies. When the Nazis captured Saint-Exupéry and threw him in jail, the security guard liked when someone smiled. Here again, this sentence does not really make sense. Take a look. When the Nazis captured Saint-Exupéry and threw him in jail, when they captured him and threw him in jail, the security guard must have done something for the sentence to make sense. The security guard liked when someone smiled, and that's why he helped him escape. That doesn't make sense. When the Nazis captured Saint-Exupéry, the security guard liked when someone smiled, so he didn't like it before. The sentence doesn't make sense this way. Also, the man had not done any harm to the security guard, so he let him go. The guard did not want Saint-Exupéry to lose his family, and he imagined if this happened to him. Okay, the two reasons are not really clear. I can see three sentences, so perhaps I can understand that there are three reasons. Something like that he liked when someone smiled at him is a reason, okay? There was no harm done to him, so he didn't have any reason not to help him. That's number two. The guard did not want Saint-Exupéry to lose his family, so he felt sorry for him when he talked about the family. I can see that this is a third reason. So three reasons, but here you wrote two main reasons. Okay? Now, again, I analyzed this introduction. I tried to correct some mistakes and note some grammar mistakes that should apply to other essays as well, just to help you guys understand how to do things. However, this particular introduction is not a proper introduction to the question asked on the essay assignment for the story The Smile, because the question was basically, how do you think this experience changed the way Saint-Exupéry viewed people, okay? So it's not about a summary of the story or why the guard helped Saint-Exupéry escape jail. That's not the question. Why did he help him escape? The question is, how did Saint-Exupéry's view of people change? Okay. Okay, guys. Let's take a look here. Now, Maria is asking me whether I received her rewrite. Let me check, Maria, because I haven't received. Let's see. Okay, I received the one from last week, from Sunday, Maria, if this is the one you're talking about. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Okay, unfortunately, you all know now that it belongs to Maria. Sorry about that. Okay, let's take a look at this introduction. Rachel, Mrs. Price's angry voice rang throughout the classroom. Today, Rachel was turning 11, but as stated in the story, Rachel wishes she was turning 102 instead. Rachel wishes she was turning 102 because she would have known what to say to Mrs. Price when she placed the revolting red sweater on her desk. She knew she shouldn't say anything because the teacher was older, and therefore she was always right. For Rachel, it was really hard to control her tears because Mrs. Price's actions were harsh. For example, she insisted that Rachel wears a sweater. I think Mrs. Price acted the way she did because she didn't want to waste her time reasoning with Rachel. She wanted to get rid of the sweater, and from the way she acted, I believe she wanted to prove to her class her ability to be in control. Okay, very good introduction. Let's take a look in more depth. Rachel. Mrs. Price's angry voice rang throughout the classroom. Nice. And this is what I was saying a little while ago, Luca. When you use a quote to start your essay, you should say who said it. Here, Maria uses just Rachel, okay, which is a very short quote, but it does serve as a scene-setting sentence or a hook sentence to our essay. But then she said who said it, Mrs. Price. She also described that Mrs. Price said this while she was angry. Mrs. Price's angry voice rang throughout the classroom, so that is a very good start. Today, Rachel was turning 11. Now, today here doesn't mean today. It means today in the story. So you used a past tense to refer to that day in the story. You should continue using the past tense since you decided to write in the past tense from the beginning. So today, Rachel was turning 11. But, you don't have to say as stated in the story. But she wished she was turning 102 instead. Rachel wished she was turning 102 because she would have known what to say to Mrs. Price when she placed the revolting red sweater on her desk. She knew she shouldn't say anything because the teacher was older, therefore she was always right. Now, as I said before, if you take a look here, before older, she knew she shouldn't say anything because the teacher was older. This is a complete sentence. Therefore, let's take a look after therefore. She was always right. Another complete sentence. A complete sentence is defined as a sentence that has a subject, a verb, and makes sense by itself. Therefore, and then a complete sentence, as I said before, is also a complete sentence. So here you have a run-on sentence one more time. So, how should it be written? She knew she shouldn't say anything because the teacher was older and therefore always right. So remove she. So, because the teacher, let me change the color, because the teacher was older and therefore, remove the comma, remove she, was always right. That's a better way to write it so that you don't have a run-on sentence. For Rachel, it was really hard to control her tears because Mrs. Price's actions were harsh. For example, she insisted that Rachel wear the sweater. I really don't see a reason for this sentence. Mrs. Price's actions were harsh. That's it. If you want to name one of the scenes or the proofs that prove that she was harsh, then perhaps you could have integrated that in the same sentence. So for Rachel, it was really hard to control her tears because Mrs. Price's actions were harsh, comma, like when she insisted that Rachel wear the sweater, for example. Or you could just remove it altogether. I think Mrs. Price acted the way she did. Good. As I said, I want to answer the question in a short, clear sentence. Try to use words from the actual question so that your reader understands that you are answering the question right now. Because she didn't want to waste her time. That's number one. Reasoning with Rachel. Comma. She. If you're still going to use a comma, then it's not going to be an uppercase she. S. She wanted to get rid of the sweater. That's number two. Comma and, the third one. From the way she acted, I believe she wanted to prove to her class her ability to be in control. That is number three. One last thing I need to say here is the use of Words like I believe and I think, as you can see here, we have I think Mrs. Price acted the way she did, and then I believe she wanted to prove, is not totally wrong, okay? Is not wrong at all, maybe, but is not something that we like to use. Try not to make your essay personal. Don't talk about yourself and don't talk to the reader. Don't address the reader. So maybe writing this as a fact would have been better. Like Mrs. Price acted the way she did because she didn't want to waste her time reasoning with Rachel. She wanted to get rid of the sweater, and from the way she acted, she wanted to prove to her class her ability to be in control. Again, guys, here we have 3 clear reasons. Very, very good. Good job, Maria. However, they're all in one long sentence. Trying to break them down into 2 or 3 sentences may be better, and you can use words like also or furthermore or moreover in your hint sentences to distinguish each of the reasons from each other.